All right, so first off the bat, I do recognize that I'm in a new setting. That's mainly just because I'm away from my main apartment for the next week, and there were a lot of really big releases coming out this past weekend, and I knew I wasn't going to have enough time to film any of that before I left, so I kind of have to make do with where I am right here, and I didn't want to push hold on any of those. So throughout this next week, we're going to get a lot of reviews from this guy. I got to kind of work overtime with that. And yeah, I figured I might as well get, at least within my mind, my most anticipated one out of the way first. So let's just dive into this one. Terminal Velocity from John Petrucci. So, John Petrucci really doesn't need any introductions. He is the lead guitarist for Dream Theater, one of the founding members of this staple of progressive metal groundwork. The main linchpin, though, the main thing for this one outside of new music from John Petrucci is the reuniting factor between John Petrucci and Mike Portnoy on drums. These guys haven't worked collectively since Black Clouds and Silver Linings back in, I think 2009 was when that guy was released. So this is the first time in over a decade these two personalities have worked together. It was definitely like a coming home factor. For me. Now, rounding out this is the lead bass player that we actually had from his first studio solo album of Suspended Animation of Dave LaRue. And Dave actually is another member that Mike Portnoy has worked with within the Flying Colors sequence. So all these personalities have worked together in one shape or form. So the three of them are coming together with this instrumental progressive metal music. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is really a coming home for both John Petrucci and Mike Portnoy. It feels like these boys have been playing together and hadn't missed a beat since 2009. The playing styles and the synergy that all three musicians are bringing to the forefront really made me emotional in a very core way. I was coming into this with, on the one hand, lower expectations, knowing that it was just John Petrucci doing an instrumental progressive metal outfit, but also with pretty high expectations, knowing what the caliber of musicianship was bringing to the table. And in both respects, I was not disappointed. What we have on this album is just superb progressive metal instrumental music. Like, we're looking at lead guitar driven stuff that, say, Joe Satriani would be playing down. And this isn't necessarily a ill-wanted comparison, because John has traveled with the Satchman on many G3 tours. So it's you know, the comparison wouldn't necessarily be all that misplaced. The thing that I love about these three musicians, because I also feel like Dave will probably get a little bit pushed over to the side just with the other two big personalities that we found on here, are their ability to balance all the different emotions. We have really, really hard-hitting tracks, such as the title track of Terminal Velocity, which is probably my favorite track off of this, along with Glossy-Eyed Zombies, as well as Snake in My Boots and Temple of Sicardia. All of these are very hard-hitting, very metal, very oomph, like the beginning styles of even Gemini, the oldest track off of this, which was essentially conceived almost a decade prior to this, are very metal in approach. It's getting flavors of those very metal and menacing things that John can do. Even the beginning licks of Glossy-Eyed Zombies, which might be my second favorite track off of this, has that like really deep, and you know those stank face, like that yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that energy, that drive is really punctuated and center stage. But we also have some really, really mellow and almost jazzy tracks, like Out of the Blue and The Odd Father and The Way Things Fall. All of these tracks have a little bit more heart to them. They're not just your typical average, run-of-the-mill, kind of like B-side, softer, mellow metal tracks. These have a lot more heart, and this was something that John is always able to channel within his guitar styling. I mean, you need to look no further than a lot of those Dream Theater more emotionally charged ballads, and that's definitely found within this one. And then rounding this off, some of my favorite tracks, I love Happy Song of how jovial and fun it is, as well as Snake in My Boots, even a little bit of The Way Things Fall, but definitely with Snake in My Boots and Happy Songs of being that quirky, fun aspect. And even though I know that this is a John Petrucci solo album, I can't help but think how much influence Mike Portnoy brought to the table, because Mike Portnoy is a brilliant composer and producer of music as well. Like, his forethought and his direction and his influence was one of the main things that I loved about Dream Theater, and what I think has been missing from Dream Theater within this past decade, at least within the 2010s. Because that's where a lot of this unifying heart is brought to the forefront. And not to say that John Petrucci can't bring the heart, he definitely can. But what I love is that Mike Portnoy brings that direction that the heart needs to follow. And I feel like his influence on this album is definitely felt, especially within the title track of Terminal Velocity, as well as The Odd Father, and coming in with Snake in My Boots. Like, all these tracks really blend that. And in terms of the actual sound, because I've kind of, tiptoed around the actual sound, on the one hand, it is the typical progressive metal instrumentals that we are used to hearing in this kind of a setting. There's nothing really to elevate it to that next big level. The only times when I felt myself really getting to that next level, awe-inspiring brilliance and masterpiece is within the title track, maybe within Gemini, and within Glassy-Eyed Zombies. All the other tracks are really great progressive metal, but at no point do I ever feel like this is something that I really want to go back to. Like, this is much more of a musician's album in mastering the craft and showing what the craft can do, but not necessarily a sit down, enjoy, getting into repeated listens. Now, this is something that I will come back to every once in a while, very similar to, say, Joe Satriani, or even another Mike Portnoy, John Petrucci project of Liquid Tension Experiment. But this isn't something that I would really gravitate to or seek out and listen to time and time and time again. Overall, I was, on the one hand, like I said, it met all of my expectations, and at no point did it overly exceed them, outside of maybe a couple of points on this. But at the same token, at no point did I ever feel like I was being let down. At no point did I ever feel like this was something I wouldn't enjoy later on. Like, if somebody were to put this on, I would definitely groove to it. And as I mentioned many a times, this definitely feels like a homecoming for all members of this band, producing the music that I love to listen to. So yeah, overall, I've been loving Terminal Velocity. I don't know if it will get quite as many repeated listens as a lot of the other albums that had come out this weekend, but it is one that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I have no problem talking about it first for all these. So yeah, in terms of my overall rating, this is one that I would pick up on physical format. Like, this is one that there's enough on it to really satisfy my crave for some good instrumental progressive rock music, but I don't think it's anything more than that, because it does definitely, I don't want to say suffers from, but it definitely exhibits a lot of the features that a solo project of a purely instrumental piece exhibits. So there you go. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.